A conversation with Brock Meier. After a half-century career of scientific research in infrared, laser, and human vision, Brock Meier now devotes himself to finding the incredible, untold stories of little-known people from centuries past. Written, cultural, and material history are the springboard from which emerges engaging and powerful new stories for today. Come with him on this journey as a story begins where the history ends. When not writing, Brockmire find time to make exotic wines and experimental dessert as he listens to jazz, opera, and classical music, all while thinking about where the next story is headed. Regardless of what he finds himself doing, Brockmire endeavors to venture out on the keen edge of life where word and spirit reveal the very reason for existence and the purpose of it all. Brockmire lives in the hill country of Texas, where the land possesses a quiet sort of beauty, running with cold, spring-fed streams and tread with ancient, magical cypress. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy and excitement to have on the show today, Brock Meyer. How are you doing today, Brock? Welcome on the show.
Glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. I'm so excited, really, to have you on the show today. And I must say, you have an amazing bio. That's such a great one. So, Brock, I need to first say that I am taken aback by the description page of your book, The Stone Quarter, a novel of Petra in ancient Arabia on Amazon. And I would like us to start this conversation by asking you the many obvious question most authors get asked. What inspired you to write this book, and why did you choose to set it in first century Nebati? Let's start from there.
This may sound kind of strange, but I never really had a desire to write a novel.
Hmm.
I've written off and on in my scientific career
Oh,
as well as other things, but I had no interest in fiction. But that's a whole nother long story that we won't go into here. But as far as the particular book that we're discussing today, 40 years ago, I read the story of a man. It's a kind of a brief story recorded in the three synoptic gospels.
hmm.
And when I read that brief story, it only takes about probably 1 or 2 hours of
Wow.
actual historical time. But for some reason, that story just captured my attention. And all these years, I haven't really been able to like let go of that story.
Hmm.
And after I first read it, probably 12 years later,
Yeah.
I heard a song that had been written by a man named Bob Bennett, who is
Wow.
a fantastic songwriter singer.
Hmm.
And his song, Man of the Tombs, was written about this same man in this same brief event.
Hmm.
And he gave humanity to that man that
Wow.
doesn't even really show up so much in the original story. So
Hmm.
that really even deepened my fascination for it. So I knew sooner or later I would have to do something with it.
Wow.
And then when I decided to sit down and write the story of the man's entire life,
Yeah.
which is obviously all fictional, I thought, well, where is it going to be? Who's this guy's heritage and all that? Looking into that a little bit more, I realized this man might be a Nabatean. Well,
Hmm.
I didn't know anything about Nabatea, so I
Wow.
started just reading about it, looking into it. And the more that I read about that, archaeological reports and things of that sort,
Hmm.
the more amazed I became with these people and their
Hmm.
culture and their history.
Wow.
So from there, the book just kind of began to take shape.
Wow. I must say that's such an amazing one, really. Quite lovely, quite wholesome, quite pulling to me. Thank you so much for running us through the background, the making of the book. Quite beautiful, really. And I wanted to go now into the setting because the setting of Petra feels quite vivid and alive on the page of the book. I wanted to ask you, how did you go about researching and recreating such a richly textured ancient world? And were there any surprising facts or cultural details you uncovered during your research that made it into the book? I'm just curious.
Most of my research has been done online. There are some books that have been written about these people.
Yeah.
And just for the interest of your audience out there, most people haven't even really necessarily heard the term Nabatea or the Nabatean kingdom, but
Wow.
most everybody's heard of the city of Petra. And
Mm.
Petra was the capital of that kingdom at the time.
Yeah.
But I really obtained a lot of my basic material for the research through there's probably two or three of these that you can become a part of. I used a thing called academia.edu.
Mm.
Anybody can go on there and get a free membership to it. I began to get into the archaeology that's been
Mm.
done, and most of that has happened over the past probably 30 or so years.
Mm.
With as much has been learned about it,
Wow.
to this date, uh, only 5% of the city of Petra has
Mm.
actually been looked into. So there is loads of stuff, surprises, I'm
Absolutely.
sure. So many things fascinated me about that culture.
Mm.
It's out in the middle of the desert. They get something like 4 or 5 centimeters of rain per year. It
Mm.
is a desert. Almost nothing grows there. However, they were able to develop technology that captured virtually every drop of rain that would
Mm.
fall. And they have water systems that they transported water dozens of kilometers,
Mm.
uh, incredible underground cisterns, you name it.
Yeah.
So the city of Petra was much like we think of the city of Las Vegas today. It's out in the middle of a desert, and you could ride in a car for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, finally get into Las Vegas, and there's all these big fountains and stuff. It was the same way with Petra. It
Yeah.
was a garden spot. They
Wow.
actually had artificial waterfalls and
Mm.
fountains, things like that, swimming pools. The status of women in that society also is quite
Mm.
unusual
Wow.
in that the queens shared power with their husbands, the kings. So
Mm.
you can see on all of their coinage, the queen's face is right there next to the king.
Mm.
So, different things like that just really drew me into who they were and really formed the basis of what the story became.
Wow, that's such an amazing one, really. I must say that's such a beautiful, quite compelling even to me. Thank you for sharing. I can see that you've done a lot, even in the researching stage of the book. Quite beautiful to me and quite amazing. Now, I also wanted to ask you, Brooke, because this novel weaves together action, emotion, and history. How did you approach balancing those different elements in your storytelling? That's the first question. And also, Noah's struggle is both internal and external. Was it important to you to show how
Right,
trauma can change someone's identity and sense of purpose? I mean, I'm just curious to know more about that of Noah's struggle in that regards, basically.
right, right. You mentioned action, emotion, and history.
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of a reverse sequence of what you mentioned. For me, my stories really are rooted in history. So the history is where it all comes from.
Mm.
And as that history plays itself out, that really has formed within myself
Mm.
emotions that I respond to as I write.
Lovely.
And my protagonist and my characters as well have emotions that spring out of that history. And
Mm.
then their emotions result in actions
Mm.
that are portrayed in the story. So to
Wow.
me, it's kind of like the history is followed by the emotions, which eventually results in the action.
Mm.
And as far as external and internal. Just briefly, the story starts with a boy who's abandoned by his father, and then he's raised by kind of a foster father, a man who's a sculptor in Petra, who mentors him as well as being his kind of foster father.
Wow.
So he starts from a place of trauma, and most of the bulk of the story plays itself out in his in a quest that he's on. He's kind of, as he becomes a young man, he's a sculptor himself, and he's
Mm,
kind of on the fast track of the art world to become a really big deal
mm,
uh, in not only Petra, but the whole Roman Empire at that time, the whole Mediterranean basin. But through, I won't go into the details of it. I don't want to
give too much away.
destroy some of the plot here, but his career
Mm,
is ruined. His career is destroyed. So
mm,
he goes on a quest to try and resurrect that career. It takes him to the ends of the world.
right.
But that's the external quest. He's trying to recapture his career. But at the same time, there's a parallel internal quest that goes on in which he is deeply looking for belonging and family and love,
Mm.
ultimately.
Wow. This is so amazing. This is so beautiful. I love your answers to these questions, really. It sounds to me to be quite amazing and quite compelling, quite intriguing, really. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, I'd like us to diversify a little bit, slightly, into the conversation of readers' feedback. Because one of the things that I love as a writer is to sit back, fold my hands, grab a cup of coffee, and listen to readers' feedback. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be quite complex is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes the readers might get a message intended by the author. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message. Sometimes they might be far from getting the message. And sometimes they might just hilariously misunderstand the book and interpret it upside down. And as somebody who has written an amazing, quite lovely, beautiful book, having a bit of theme into history with some people, which some people can find some issues with. When it comes to history, it is very argumentative. It is very
Right.
debateful, especially if there's something that sparks a controversy. So we're like, oh, how dare him say that? How dare him? What's it trying to say with that? It is just quite a lot because I know about that when it comes to historical themed novels, yeah. But then I wanted to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your work differently from what you intended? I'm just curious, how does that make you feel as a storyteller?
For me personally, that's not a problem at all. However, anybody responds to the book,
Yeah.
if they if they respond, that's the best part of it.
Mm.
If they're just totally indifferent to it and there's no response at all, to me that's where there's a problem.
Yeah.
Here's the way that I think about literature,
Mm.
about books, in particular fiction books.
Mm.
To me, it is much like if you think of somebody composing music, whether it's a song or a symphony or an opera or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
they create something
Yeah.
from inside themselves. They
Mm.
write down that music, and it's kind of a done deal.
Mm.
But that music that's written, that's on a page, it's really nothing until somebody performs it.
Yeah,
And when that musician performs that music, that's the other half of the art.
Yeah.
There's the art of creating it, and then there's the art of interpreting it. So
Yeah.
to me, the writer of literature is like the composer of music. You've put those words on a page, and they're like cast in stone, but
Mm.
it doesn't mean anything unless somebody's reading it. So
Yeah.
then the reader is, to me, is like the performer.
Mm.
They interpret and
Yeah.
they bring their own experiences, they bring their own humanity to it.
Yeah.
So to me, if a book isn't read and responded to, it's really nothing. So
Mm.
I invite whatever somebody wants to
Thanks.
bring to it as a reader. That's kind of their business. And it's interesting to me, regardless how somebody responds to it.
Oh, I love your answer to that, really. It's quite beautiful and quite lovely to me. And I love the part that you had to mention something that really relates to me. The art, I love the way you compare it to a musical piece. Because I'm a musician, I play the violin, and you have a musician who has composed the music, and he has written down the music, and now is performing it. And now there's an art of creating, and there's an art of interpreting. That's a very lovely statement that I had to write down. Quite beautiful, really. Like it's left for the audience to see how they wanted to interpret it, how they wanted to view it, in what way it relates to them, if it's gonna be their cup of tea or not. It's
Right.
really amazing in that manner, really quite beautiful. That's a lovely interpretation you've got there. Thank you. Thank you. And also, Brooke, you had a successful career in scientific research, and I think this must be one of the reasons why this novel is quite exceptional to me, really. But then you've had a successful career in scientific research, which is such a different world from writing fiction. Now, my first question in this regard would be, what led you to make that transition? And what ultimately drew you to becoming a writer? Was storytelling always in the background for you, or did something specifically spark the shift? I'm just curious, the curious cat.
What I mentioned earlier about this one story that had been kind of lying dormant inside of me for about
For
40 years,
years.
believe it or not.
Mm,
Uh, that's part of it. I think one thing that will help you think a little bit differently about, you use the word transition.
yeah.
It's a transition externally from working in a scientific laboratory to
Mm,
sitting down at a desk and writing a book. That
mm,
seems to be different from the outside.
yeah.
But I think most people would agree with me who are involved in scientific research
Mm,
that that pursuit itself is very much a creative pursuit. I
mm,
think a lot of people, when they hear the word science or research, something like that, they think that it's very analytical, and it can be. Even more so, there's a greater importance in creativity
yeah.
because in
Yeah.
research, you're going into areas potentially where nobody's ever really gone before.
Mm,
It's very much an exploration.
yeah.
When you go into a scientific laboratory,
Mm,
uh, you are looking in an area and asking yourself, here's something that we don't know about. How are we going to find out about it? And
right.
because nobody has ever looked there before, you
Mm,
have to develop new ways of thinking, possibly,
yeah.
develop new instrumentation, or whatever it might be. And I always found that fascinating to be involved in that kind of work. So, me, it was a pretty easy sort of transition.
Wow. That's amazing, really. That's so great. That's so beautiful. That's so pulling and quite emotional. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, apart from the stone quarter, we should please raise the book to the camera so we can see what it looks like, first of all. If you have a copy there with you.
I do.
Yeah, that's an amazing. Would you like to talk about the making of the cover? That's an amazing and very beautiful cover you got. So exceptional and quite uncommon.
I actually put the cover together myself, believe it or not.
Really?
I did not do the artwork. The artwork is actually, it's in the public domain.
Oh,
It is a sketch done by the American painter John Singer Sargent.
oh,
So I just happened to come across it, and I love some of the older classical works of art. And I
Mm.
guess because my stories are based in history, in fact, history long ago,
Yeah,
it's important to give more of a classical kind of flavor to
yeah,
the cover than more contemporary artwork.
absolutely. That's an amazing one, really. Thank you for sharing. And now, apart from the Stone Quarter, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Yes, the Stonecutter is the first in a, I guess you could call it a series, but it's not really a sequential series. It's really more of a collection of stories that will all be set in and around first century Nabatean Petra. I found that such a fascinating thing that as soon as I got into it, more and more ideas for stories started coming to me as I explored the history.
Mhm.
So there are, my wife doesn't want me to say this, but I expect it to be a series of maybe 7 novels.
Mm.
We'll see if I get that far. I also have written 2 short stories that are kind of loosely connected with the series.
Wow.
And on my website right now, if anybody in your audience is interested, they
Mm.
can sign up for my free newsletter. And when you do that, you get access to my short story that's posted there now.
Wow.
And I just finished another short story that I'm really excited to release. It'll
Mm.
probably be out within the week, maybe. So if anybody wants to go on there,
Yeah.
it's just brockmeyerauthor.com.
That's amazing, really. That's such an amazing one. And I would also like to ask you, as a published author that you are, do you have any sort of advice that you would give an upcoming writer, those who are looking forward to publishing a book but haven't yet gotten their hands on it? What would you advise people in this category?
I think a really important thing is finding community with
Mm.
other authors, with other writers.
Yeah,
There are a lot of things available now. In person is great to actually see people face to face.
yeah,
There are a lot of local writers groups,
yeah.
critique groups. I belonged to a critique group for several years before I started to write this novel, and I learned a tremendous amount from those other folks in the group. Even book clubs can really be valuable
Mm.
in being exposed not only to other literature, but hearing other people's perspectives on those stories
Mm.
as well.
Yeah.
So, being in a local fellowship of writers is great. There
Mm.
are also online groups that can be really helpful. You can become there's free membership available to it. It's called authormedia.social.
Oh,
Totally
wow.
free. It's a large group of authors. They're mainly in the US, but I
Mm.
think there's other people around the world as well. It's open to whoever.
Oh,
There are
wow.
probably, I don't know exactly how many people on there, hundreds of people. And there are a lot of different forums that if you have an interest in marketing or publishing
Yeah.
or the craft of writing,
Mm.
whatever it might be, are ready to encourage you or to give you practical information, whatever it might be.
Wow, that's an amazing one, really. And I must say, I love your answer to these questions. Quite beautiful and quite great. And just in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of any of your book. On what platform are they available on for purchase?
You can get it pretty much wherever books are sold. It's available through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop, pretty much anything online. It's available through. And unfortunately, I don't have it quite up yet, but I hope to, before too long, maybe in the next month or two,
Yeah.
have direct sales on my own website.
Oh,
So I'll be able to sell like personally signed
yeah.
author
Yeah.
copies of it to get that out to people as well.
Oh, that's great. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of The Stone Carter by Brooke Mayer directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles. I also left a link to his website and his social media pages or possible followings. So thank you so much, Brooke, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say it's been more than awesome, quite great, lovely sitting down and having a conversation on your impressively written The Stone Quarter. This is very great and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you for coming on to share your
I
book
enjoy
with the
I
audience.
enjoyed it as well. It was great. Good talking with you.
Absolutely, it's my joy as well.